To avoid being bothered, I told the mean girls that I was the bad boy's girlfriend. Since then, I made sure they saw me near him every day, pretending we were close. One day, the leader of the mean girls dragged me to a secluded spot behind the bleachers, lying. The bad boy's girlfriend. Who do you think you're fooling with all those lies? Suddenly, the bad boy himself, Andres, appeared with his hands in his pockets and pulled me close to him. My girl, you want to mess with hers? My homeroom teacher, Mr. Martinez, called me into the hallway. How about switching rooms with Laura's? Laura was originally in room 302, but it was full of mean girls. They had played cruel pranks on her, pushed her, and even locked her in the bathroom to scare her. She couldn't take it anymore and reported them, but the school did nothing. They only offered to switch her room. And the unlucky replacement?
Me.
You're here on a full scholarship, Clara. It wasn't easy to get into the school. We're having some issues with room assignments. And as class president, you should set an example. Mr. Martinez made it clear. It was obvious. Everyone else was rich and influential, with parents who could make life difficult for the school. I was the poor one, the easy target. If I went at 302, I would end up like Laura, or even worse. I spent the whole lunch period feeling anxious, trying to find a solution. Then Andres, the school's bad boy, entered through the back door with his crew, slamming it shut behind them. I had an idea. Andres was 6 feet 1 inch, with an attractive and rebellious look that screamed trouble. He was a man of few words, but those words were usually sharp. If he could walk with me to 302, even just once, the mean girls might have to be at least a little nicer to me. At least for a few days. I took my completed English homework and approached Andres, placing it in front of him. Here's today's homework. Andres, absorbed in his mobile game, barely looked up. I moved the sheet closer. It looked like he was about to tear it up, but then he noticed it was already done.
Finally, he looked at me.
I kept my gaze down. Andres, Mr. Martinez wants you to help me move rooms this afternoon. Andres paused and then silently nodded. The bad boy could smoke, get into fights, and have questionable fashion sense, but in class, he was just another student. Helping a girl move wasn't embarrassing, especially when she had bribed him with a completed assignment. That afternoon, I led Andres, carrying my bags and boxes to room 302. I inserted the key and opened the door. Valeria, the queen bee of the mean girls, was sitting in a chair, surrounded by her clique, like some kind of kangaroo court. Clara, right? In room 302, you follow my rules.
I had anticipated that.
I let out a slight sigh and stopped at the door. Why are you stopping? Come in. Andres, carrying my things without a care, entered without hesitation. The mean girls froze. What rules? Can we put this on the desk? Andres didn't even bother to look at them as he set my things on the desk. Valeria stammered. Sure? Andres ignored her. He took the rest of my stuff from the hallway, including my bathroom items and mini fridge, and placed them in the bathroom before leaving. I ran after him. Wanna have dinner later? No. Well, make sure to show up at the study hall after dinner. Mr. Martinez has been watching you. I reminded him softly, watching him disappear before closing the door behind me, pretending to be reluctant. The atmosphere in the room had completely changed. You're close to Andres? What's up with you? I offered a shy smile, letting the silence speak for itself. The mean girl's eyes now showed a clear hint of awe. They could bully regular girls, but Andres' girl? That was trouble. I unpacked my things, placing my water bottle in the most convenient spot on the counter. A small victory. The next few days in 302 were surprisingly peaceful. Everyone was much kinder than I had expected. Then, at lunch, I ran into Valeria in the cafeteria, eating alone. Where's Andres? My heart skipped a beat. She was getting suspicious. Just then, Andres and his friends walked out of the gym. I tucked my hair behind my ear and smiled sweetly. Playing basketball as always. Honestly, he plays so much that sometimes he forgets to eat. I ran to the vending machine, bought a Gatorade, and walked over to Andres. Thanks for helping me move the other day, I murmured, placing the drink in his hands before quickly walking away, pretending to be shy. His friends started joking and laughing. Andres might have been tough, but he was undeniably attractive, and girls were always trying to get his attention.
To him,
I was probably just another girl trying to protect herself. But to me, every little gesture mattered. Seeing Andres holding the drink I had given him without complaining, hearing his friends laugh, gave me the false sense that my strategy was working perfectly. I kept pretending to be comfortable, with a slight smile on my face, while Valeria watched me from afar, her eyes narrow with suspicion. In the days that followed, I maintained the act as carefully as possible. I always made sure to be nearby when Andres was around, without seeming too desperate or obvious. A few words exchanged here, a discreet glance there, and the illusion stayed alive. The mean girls who used to be so intimidating now kept their distance, as if I had some kind of invisible protection. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. And I was right. That afternoon, as I returned to the dorm after literature class, I sensed an unusual presence in the hallway. My instincts told me to run, but before I could react, Valeria and her followers cornered me near the fire escape. "You think we're idiots, Clara?" Valeria hissed, crossing her arms while her friends blocked any way out. "You and Andres, there's nothing between you two. He barely even looks at you." I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." She laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "Oh, please. Andres may be rude, but he's not blind. Do you really think someone like him would waste his time with someone like you?" Before I could respond, I felt a tug on my arm, shoving me against the wall with force. One of the girls grabbed my hair, twisting it painfully. My heart pounded, but I couldn't scream. Not there, where no one would care. "You think you can play with us, Clara?" Valeria leaned in closer to my face. "Do you think he'll show up and save you now?" I tried to break free, but another shove sent me to the ground. My hands burned as they scraped against the rough concrete, and I tasted blood when I accidentally bit my lip. I curled up, bracing for the worst, but after one last kick to my backpack, Valeria stepped back, satisfied. "Don't worry, we won't do anything for now, but if you keep up this little act, Clara," she lowered her voice and whispered near my ear, "we'll make sure no one believes you anymore." They left laughing, leaving me on the floor, trembling. It took me a while to pull myself together, getting up slowly and feeling the pain spreading through my body. When I finally got back to the dorm, I avoided the mirror. I didn't want to see the marks. The next morning, I tried to hide the bruises as best as I could, wearing long sleeves and cheap makeup, but I couldn't completely conceal the cut on my lip. I walked through the cafeteria with my head down, but Andres saw me. He always seemed like he wasn't paying attention to anything, but in that moment, his eyes met mine, and for a fraction of a second, he really saw me. He dropped his tray on the table and walked over to me, stopping by my side with an expression I had never seen before. Andres looked me up and down and narrowed his eyes. Before I could say anything, he grabbed my arm firmly and pulled up my sleeve, revealing the purple bruises I had tried to hide. "Who did this?" His voice was low but filled with something dangerous. I tried to pull my arm away, but he held it tighter, forcing me to look at him. My heart was pounding so fast, I thought I might faint right there. "It's nothing. I just fell." I tried to lie, but his gaze silenced me instantly. Without saying another word, he turned and stormed across the cafeteria. I knew where he was going, and before I could react, Andres was already at Valeria's table. The entire cafeteria went silent as he slammed his hand on the table, leaning over her. "If I find out you touched her again, you'll regret it." His voice was low but carried a real threat. Valeria let out a nervous laugh, but her eyes showed fear. The other girls couldn't even look at him. "Andres, you know that." "Shut up." He cut her off, staring her down. "I said don't touch her. This is your warning." With that, he walked away, grabbing his tray and leaving as if nothing had happened. The entire cafeteria remained silent, with all eyes on me. I wanted to disappear, but at the same time, a strange feeling took over me. For the first time, Andres had done something for me without me asking. He cared somehow. After that day, something changed between us. He started being around more present. He didn't talk much, but he always appeared when I needed him. When the girls gave me dirty looks, just one glance from Andres was enough to make them look away. And suddenly, I didn't have to pretend so much anymore. I started observing him differently. There was something more to him beyond the rebellious look and tough attitude. He had a strange way of showing concern, but it was real. And I, who once only used him for protection, started to wonder, what if he really cared? Slowly, we started running into each other more often. Short conversations became more frequent, and I began to realize that Andres was more than just the bad boy of the school. He was a person with his own problems, insecurities, and maybe in some way starting to care about me too. Since that day in the cafeteria, something between Andres and me changed, even if neither of us admitted it out loud. He started showing up more often in the places I usually hung out. It wasn't like he was actively looking for me, but somehow, we always ended up close to each other. I didn't have to pretend as much anymore. His presence felt natural, almost as if he had always been there. At first, I tried to keep things the way they were, maintaining the safe distance I had set for myself. But it was hard when he looked at me that way, with those deep eyes that seemed to see beyond the facade I tried to maintain. He wasn't much of a talker, but his actions spoke louder than any words. Small gestures, like holding the door for me, staying close when the girls from room 302 tried to glare at me, or even sharing a comfortable silence when we found ourselves sitting in the same corner of the library. One night, while I was trying to finish an essay in the library, Andres appeared out of nowhere, dropping his backpack onto the chair beside me and staring at my laptop screen. "What are you writing?" he asked in a low, husky voice, resting his chin on his hand. I tried not to seem nervous about his proximity. "Literature essay. I have to finish it by tomorrow." He nodded, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Sounds boring?" I laughed, surprising even myself. "Yeah, a little." To my surprise, he stayed there, watching me type, occasionally making short comments about the music playing in my headphones or how annoying the teacher was. It was strange, but also comforting. Little by little, Andres became a constant in my life, and the barrier I had built around myself began to crack. One afternoon, while I was organizing some things in my locker, I heard his voice behind me. "I'll pick you up after class today." I turned around, confused. "Pick me up? For what?" He shrugged, as if it wasn't a big deal. "You need to get out a little. Let's take a walk." My first instinct was to say no. I never went out, always staying in the dorm or focusing on my studies, but the casual way he said it made me hesitate. There was something about him that made me want to say yes. "All right," I murmured, pretending to be indifferent, but my heart was pounding. When class ended, he was waiting for me by the exit, leaning against the wall like he didn't have a single care in the world. We walked without rushing, and soon we were far from school, in a quiet park. We sat on a bench, and Andres, always silent, pulled out a candy from his pocket and offered it to me. I accepted, feeling a strange sensation in my chest. "Have you always been this quiet?" I asked, playing with the candy wrapper. He glanced at me sideways, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Only when there's nothing to say." I chuckled softly. I thought bad boys were supposed to be louder. He let out a light laugh, and for the first time, I noticed how rare and genuine it sounded. Not everything they say about me is true. I stayed quiet, letting his words sink in. Somehow, it seemed obvious now. Andres wasn't just the bad boy of the school. He had layers, and more, I wanted to uncover them all. Days passed, and our interactions became more frequent. He would show up at the library, sit with me in the cafeteria, and even start small conversations in the hallway. The girls from room 302 still looked at me with disdain, but they didn't dare touch me anymore. Andres had made his message clear, and everyone knew that messing with me meant messing with him. One night, as we were walking back to the dorm together, a light rain began to fall. We ran for cover under a canopy, laughing as if it were the most fun thing in the world. We were so close that I could feel the warmth of his body beside me. My laughter faded slowly, and when I looked at him, I noticed he was looking at me differently, more intensely. "Why do you do this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. His eyes studied my face, as if taking in every detail, before finally murmuring, "Because I care." My heart skipped a beat. There was no lie in his eyes, just a raw sincerity that made me feel vulnerable in a way I had never felt before. For a moment, I thought about looking away, pretending that nothing was happening, but I knew it was too late. From that night on, everything changed. We spent more time together, and what once was a convenient lie turned into something real. Andres protected me, not because I had convinced him to, but because he wanted to. And me? I could no longer deny what I felt. The stolen glances turned into subtle touches, the silences between us became comfortable, and every moment by his side felt more meaningful than I was willing to admit. Andres was everything I never thought I needed, and yet, he was there, becoming an undeniable part of my life. I had started it all with a lie, but now, I was living a truth I never imagined possible. After that rainy night when Andres told me he cared about me, something inside me changed completely. I no longer saw him as just the school's troublemaker, the guy everyone avoided and feared. I started noticing his nuances, the way his silences spoke louder than words, how he observed everything around him with a tired look, as if he was used to being judged without anyone truly trying to know him. I didn't know how, but every time we were together, the lie I had made up to protect myself started to feel more real. And one day, it became crystal clear. We were sitting on the staircase behind the gym, where he liked to spend time when he wanted to be away from everyone. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and I felt at ease sitting there beside him. Andres played absent-mindedly with an unlit cigarette between his fingers, lost in thought, and before I realized it, I broke the silence. Andres, why do you always act like you don't care about anything? My voice came out softer than I intended. He sighed, looking at the horizon before turning his eyes to me. Because people only see what they want to see anyway. I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. Andres didn't usually open up, so I knew I had to take advantage of this moment. Ever since I was a kid, everyone treated me like I was a problem, he said with a bitter laugh. Teachers said I was hopeless. My parents fought with me like I was a ticking time bomb. And me? Well, he shrugged. I just followed the script they wrote for me. I swallowed hard. That explained a lot. The way he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, how he never bothered trying to explain himself to anyone. Everyone saw him as the bad boy, so he simply embraced the role, even if deep down it wasn't who he really wanted to be. But you're more than that, I murmured, watching his face closely. I've seen it, you care. Maybe not in the way people expect, but you do. He looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to figure out if I was saying that because I truly believed it or just out of pity. Then, he shook his head, letting out a soft laugh, but without his usual sarcasm. You're weird, Clara, he said, tossing the cigarette away. But I think I like that. I felt my face heat up, but before I could say anything, he abruptly changed the subject. And those bitches? What are we gonna do about them? I turned to him, surprised. What do you mean? He smirked, that mischievous grin I had already learned to recognize. You really think I'm gonna let what they did to you slide? After everything, I think it's time we got even. For a second, I hesitated. I wasn't the vengeful type, but the memory of the fear I felt when Valeria and her followers cornered me was still fresh in my mind. They hadn't paid for it, and now, with Andres by my side, I knew I didn't have to hide anymore. What do you have in mind? I asked, trying to hide a smile. Andres leaned in closer, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Just watch. The next day, school went on as usual. Valeria and her group strutted through the hallways as always, flaunting their arrogance and thinking they still had control over everything. But Andres had a plan, and I just had to play along. The first part involved a simple anonymous message to the principal, exposing all the pranks Valeria and her friends had pulled over the semester. Everything from sabotaging other students to petty theft in the cafeteria. Of course, it was all carefully documented, thanks to Andres and his friends' discreet surveillance. Watching the principal call Valeria into his office in the middle of the hallway, with everyone watching, was just the beginning of her humiliation. Then came part 2. During lunch break, Andres made sure to pull me into the middle of the cafeteria, right in front of Valeria and all her followers, and without any warning, he kissed me. Not just any kiss, but one of those breathtaking ones that made everyone stop and stare. When we finally pulled apart, the shock on the girls' faces was priceless. Just so we're clear, Andres said loud enough for everyone to hear. Clara doesn't have to fake anything. She's really my girlfriend. The cafeteria erupted into murmurs, laughter, and whispers. Valeria looked pale, unable to hide the defeated expression on her face. I had never felt so powerful. After that, the girls from room 302 never dared to mess with me again. I was no longer just the scholarship girl they could step on. I was Andres' girlfriend, and that changed everything. But what no one knew was that, for me, it was no longer just a game. I actually liked him. I liked the way he protected me without expecting anything in return, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. And from the way he held me in the cafeteria, I knew it wasn't just a game for him either. Now, everything was different. I had earned the respect I always wanted at school, but more than that, I had someone by my side who saw me for who I really was. And that was worth more than any revenge.